You're listening to We Ain't Dying for This, a Black woman's guide to liberation, and I'm your host, Crystle Johnson. We are a community of Black women demanding our collective liberation through radically soft living. Each week, we share the stories of Black women who have set themselves free from the expectations of others and are living on their own terms.
So you are joining us live at the Soulful Experience Cartagena with the Black women who invested in themselves and took the time to be here with us over this week. So just want to check in to make sure that you all can hear us. I know you see us like in a wide frame, so you probably can't see our faces very clear. But if you can tell us if you can hear us and also if you can see us on screen, so then we can continue and jump into the conversation. And while you're at it, let us know where it is that you're listening from. And of course, if there's a Black woman that you think might benefit from this conversation, tag her in the comments or share this live with her right now. And if y'all see me looking down, I'm right there. Dallas just tagged me into the chat. Hey, Dallas. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mahogany, and anyone else who is listening in. Shelly, Dr. Ashley Daddy Robbins, Alicia. Hey, y'all. Okay, Taryn. Okay. I can hear you. The volume is low. The wind is loud. We're going to do our best. Yes, we are going to do our very best because, again, we wanted to give you all a bird's eye view into our experience here in Cartagena at the Soulful Experience. So for those of you who've never tuned in before, We Ain't Dying for This is a community for Black women who are demanding our collective liberation through radically soft living. So this podcast was created because Black women are frankly dying. So I wanted to create this podcast in order to help people to understand the different ways that they might experience liberation and freedom. So we've had a lot of different conversations with a lot of different brilliant Black women over the last several months. And today we are here with my friend that I'm just meeting for the first time, actually, this week. And we didn't even talk about it, but yeah, this is our first time meeting in person. Brittany Janae Kess, and we're going to be having a conversation about loving accountability as liberation. And what I would also love to do is just do like brief intros of the women who are here with us as well, because they'll also be joining in on this conversation as Brittany holds space for, you'll find out. She'll tell you a little bit more about it, but we're going to hold space for a conversation with everybody rather than it just being a one-to-one conversation with Brittany and I. So what I'll do is start here all the way to my left. Just name. Oh, need my mic. Name, where you're coming from, and maybe like what was your intention when you decided to.
Hi everybody. You might remember me if you're watching from like maybe like the third, fourth episode, but my name is Dre Sherwood-Hill, and I am here from Las Vegas through Virginia, 757 all day. I'm here, and I chose to come here because I decided this was something that I wanted to do. I've pretty much been affirming that I travel often for the last 7 years, and that's just something that I've been doing, and I thought this was a great opportunity to come and be liberated and feel liberated and honestly just let my hair down. So I'm glad to be here. It's been a great experience thus far.
Hey everybody, my name is Patrice Webb. I'm coming from DC. I have a company called Indwelling Consulting, and I decided to invest in myself because I am so worth it. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, I'm Clary. I decided to be a part of the social experience because I've been this for quite some time. I am passionate about this is practice. So yeah, I invested in ourselves
Chloe Sosa Garrett. You might also remember me from an earlier episode of Being Dying for This. I am from New York, currently reside in New Jersey, and I came to not only provide content creation and thank you for but also to learn how to relax from these lovely women who have done an excellent job of instilling that care and nurturing that I have for others into me. So thank you.
Should we pause for a second? Okay, so we are going to pause just for a moment to make sure we do something to make sure everybody can hear us, even if that means we have to slide over to another space.
Pausing. She's
Maybe,
pausing. She's pausing.
maybe while I was the line is
She's gonna pause the line.
playing. Have to.
Oh,
Yeah, we don't have to.
okay.
But I'm wondering if at least while we wait, because I'm curious. Oh no, it's not that I can't get back together. I'm curious, y'all. Um, just in the spirit of understanding not just where y'all from, but just like how y'all feeling, what you bring into the chat in the space. Maybe just one is words to let us know how you feeling, what you bringing. The conversation is gonna be about love, and so maybe even like what does love look like, feel like, sound like to you? I just gave it like 3 different prompts. Feel free to engage in a way that feels true as we work through that. Your voice is so relaxing. Don't put us to sleep. It's not even that. It's so not to get into like this is not even on the agenda, but in the spirit of I heard Chloe say like learning to relax, and I think I've shared this before on different platforms and spaces, and shared with some of the sisters I've been able to build with this week. That part of my like love practice involves like regulating my nervous system. And so that starts with like my pacing, like slowing down, not just in like life, but like incrementally is like okay, let me slow the thing. Okay, let me speak in a way that like serves me. Continue to give me the spaciousness to think and process like under myself, which is really different than how I think I showed up perhaps like 5 years ago. I would, you know what I'm saying? Like I watch videos and listen to recordings pre 2020, pre pandemic, racial reckoning, a time when, like as an equity practitioner, shit was just, as a black woman, as you can relate, was wild, traumatizing. Um, Certainly even in the practice of diversity and equity, in some ways, really became felt like a hamster, like a hamster wheel, like work, and an urgency that, as much as we were doing good work, perhaps didn't even serve our community. And so, yeah, I just so like survive. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like down to how I use my mouth and body to project part of like honoring, So I definitely agree with that. I remember when 2020, well, when the murder of George Floyd initially happened, how organizations, not that they didn't support us, but I don't think they were really there was not authentic enough. Yeah, there really wasn't. So when George Floyd was murdered, it was almost like, y'all, solve racism today. We care. Yeah, today. We care now. We care now. We care now. And then all of us, we started running on that hamster wheel to try to solve what it was that we could solve, and we were trying to move mountains. And we got tired and burned out really quickly. Yes. And there were so much speed by which we were working that I know for me personally, I felt like a shell of myself by the time 2021 came around.
So it's interesting that we had no intention on going back. I'm thinking about the wisdom that is like Sankofa, a West African principle. It is not taboo to go back and fetch what we have forgotten. That was only 4 years ago. This whole time, I feel like I'm experiencing a remnant of it. Like I had a conversation with a practitioner maybe about a week ago that I am experiencing an energy today. Certainly, in the context of this like election season, an energy, an urgency, some of which even feels dehuman. You know what I mean? Like it just it's unsettling. Um, it feels very similar to that of 2020 in that, and I'm just thinking in the spirit of Sankofa, certainly not in the spirit of judgment and or suggesting that I understand everyone's intention. And yet, one of the things that I do know about that a culture of whiteness is that it oftentimes prioritizes valuing the performance and how one's goodness is perceived than like ultimate outcome and longevity and long term. And so there's this like what do we call it? I don't want to be seen as the bad guy. In 2020, nobody wants to be seen as the bad guy. I don't want to be seen as aligned with the bad guy. In 2024, no one wants to be perceived to be aligned with the bad guy. And so there is this like energy, some what feels like urgent domestic energy that can, um, not always, but can, potentially the piece that doesn't feel loving or intentional or grounded in care and community. We didn't expect to go here either, and yet here we are. How is the audio though, y'all? I'm checking in on the phone. Um, how is the audio now? I know you done said a lot. I'm checking in, and then we're gonna get into it. I can hear water well, but the voices are that is so funny. There's like Shelly, there's like a fountain across the way, and the fact that you can hear the audio well, I'm like, are these connected or not? No, they connected. The blue light is on. It's keeping up the water. Wow, y'all. Dang. I hope it feels soothing. But you know what? Alicia, my bad. Alicia tapped in and said it's better. I love knowing that.
We are trying to get someone to come turn the water off,
Right.
so then you can hear us better.
Yeah. I'm curious, how are y'all experiencing this moment in time, though? Let me know.
What's also interesting about what you said about not wanting to be aligned with the bad guy is that back then the people that were anti DEI were the bad guy, and now the anti DEI people are not the bad guy for many. So that's why we see all these things changing and like support of DEI changing because those voices have gotten so loud that now it's like, well, I don't want to be aligned with DEI. Let's call it something different. Let's create these things to kind of be defensive to the people with the loud voices. So it's a different perspective, but the speed and the
Yeah.
do this right
Yeah.
now is still the same.
Yeah. And so if your practice is at the speed or the momentum of the moment, then your practice is not grounded and rooted. Um, and so I actually think that that's a really good segue into a conversation on loving accountability. Our practice can be grounded in what is trendy. Our practice can be grounded in the mainstream and or deemed voices of authority. What's valid. Our practice, whatever it is to be grounded and rooted in something that is just way more They said that's better.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then also, Teresa, I think, has turned on their closed caption. So if anyone also wants to hear exactly what it is that we're saying, maybe the volume isn't coming through great, you can also turn on your closed captioning and you'll be able to read along if you're able. So I want you to introduce yourself before, well, actually, what I want to do is maybe talk about this week a little bit, and then I'm going to run into your introduction, and then we'll jump into loving accountability as liberation. What happened? Uncut.
If you want. Okay. Chloe said,
So you don't have to hold your
Uncut.
shirt.
So she said, like,
Get it off of the shirt.
take it off the shirt. Chloe said, decency and order. She was over here like, she was over your shoulder.
Okay.
I'll get them together, y'all. Don't worry.
Okay. So this is how we have been all week. Because it's just been so amazing. Brittany asked me, I want to say the first day, how did I bring all of these women together? And the only thing that I could say was discernment. And when I got to know each one of the people that are here, I felt like they were all here for a reason. They wanted to lean into prioritizing themselves. They wanted to be able to be still. They wanted to lean into self-love, and sisterhood was important to them. So we have literally been like this since day one. Even on the phone, when we all met each other, it was the same. So it's been like this loving connection between all of us, and lots of jokes going around, and we all have our like little sayings or isms that we've had the entire week. Mine is this.
You gotta get closer to the light if you want to.
I know, like it's,
you have to go like.
I'll come closer at some point, but it's this basically.
It's a hand movement. The triangle. I'm seeing something deep.
It's a power pose.
Power
Exactly.
pose. Left to right.
Left to right. Exactly. And Brittany, you will hear hers throughout this episode, I'm sure. But hers is
Also regulated.
regulated. Chloe's is just for the flavor because she loves coffee.
Not the caffeine.
Naquea is... No, wait. Oh, yes! Naquea's is... And we'll get to telling you what it is. It is definitely an experience that we've had since we've been here. As you all know, with the soulful experience, it's important for this experience to be intimate, and also that the people that are here are enveloped in Blackness, and we happen to be out in the wild and not just around Black people. So there was a situation, but it wasn't like a loud situation. It was just like, oh, I'm gonna handle this in my own type of way, and I'm gonna take my time, just like we were just talking. Yeah, take up space, and take up time. Take up space and take my time. Absolutely. Patrice is quick and dirty.
I know, she said that today.
I said it today.
We were talking to. You were talking about her career or what she's getting into, and you were like, there are a lot of opportunities there that are, quick and dirty. And it took everything in me not to go.
What? And Dre, what is yours?
Ashe.
Oh, Ashe. It's Dre. So we have
Just
literally been laughing, giggling, cackling, if you will, because it's just been hilarious. But that has been how we have bonded with each other over these last few days. Every day we have been connected to a certain theme. So on day one, when we got here on Sunday, our theme was I am intentional. So we set intentions for how it is that we wanted to move through this experience over the course of our time together. And then yesterday, our theme was I am grounded. So we spent a lot of time with each other, like people sharing their talents with us, so then we could use what it is that we've learned that and actually contribute that to our radically soft living. So Dre taught us how to self-massage. We don't need people to massage us. We can massage ourselves. That's what I learned. Patrice is an EMDR practitioner. So that was an amazing session where we all had different breakthroughs and where we were able to close our eyes and vision. And Niquea took us through, and she will also later take us through a sound bowl healing session. But we actually all got in the pool. That was amazing. And did some stretching and some somatic exercises that can help to regulate our nervous system. Brittany obviously is in this conversation with us, and is also leading some conversations around how it is that our intentions for each day are connected back to what it is that we've learned. And then Chloe has been helping us all with our brands because some of us are struggling. Me, some of us is me. But everyone, I think, has really benefited from her knowledge around marketing and around branding. And I think we're all going to be able to show up better and more authentically as we are, rather than trying to show up for who we think might be interested. But the people that want to be around us and want to be in our space, they will find us if we just show up as we are. Today, we actually visited Palenque, which is the first free black town in the Americas, and that was an incredible experience. And I think there's so many parallels for the work that we focus on through We Ain't Dying for This, as well as this episode specifically about loving accountability as liberation. So today was great. I loved it. We were surrounded by black folks. We learned so much history, and I don't know, like, my word was amazing, but someone said speechless. Someone said, yeah, soulful, indescribable, yeah, liberating. All the words. It was amazing. So if you've never visited Cartagena, I would definitely recommend it, even if it's just for that experience, because it was incredibly freeing.
And if you haven't, and if you can visit it, there's something beautiful about spending time with, like whether it's like researching possibility models that exist for what it means to steward our own spaces, reclaim our own bodies and agencies, and align ourselves. And so the story of Palenque, I was not familiar until Crystle introduced this opportunity. Opportunity to me is, I was just like, wow, so much. So even if you can't come here, look it up. Like, spend some time.
Look it up for sure.
Researching the rich history that is the Afro-Colombian people of
Absolutely. And what I'll add last is that today was I Am Black Joy. So we really kicked off the day with joy, and the whole experience was joyful. But obviously, when you hear about how our people were enslaved and what their experiences were, that doesn't feel good. But the people of Palenque, like, their focus is on joy, and that was just amazing and so connected. So, with all that being said, who are you today, Brittany Janae?
That's such a big question. That was some really strong context, and one of the reasons why I love the, like, who are you is because it's like a big part of my knowing, and I'm pointing to the truth here, a big part of my knowing, and coming to that knowing has been asking myself that constantly. Like, very practically, I am ... and using that as a metric for just like my own calibration. And so I journal, y'all. And when Crystle said she was going to ask me that question, I'm like, let me process. Because I know that how I'm responding to that today on the heels of that experience is very different than how I probably would have responded on Sunday when I arrived here. And so I'm glad I write on black paper and use gel pens because it's easier for me to see in the darkness. Like, legit, y'all can, like, see them entirely.
Yeah.
But what I wrote here, who am I? I wrote, I am Brittany Janae. I am blessed. I am grounding. I am deepening my roots in ways that bring me more clarity about who I am, whose I am, who
I am from, where I am going, and most importantly, what I will leave behind. I'm love, love that questions, love that holds, love that affirms, love that is imperfect but grows and expands every day. I am love that doesn't begin or end with me. Love that is an intergenerational inheritance and gift. I am learning to be in flow because life, I am met with beautiful community. Observe. I am leaning into work that feels aligned, that feels good, and that creates space for the fullness of who I am. And I ended with that because this whole like inquiry and curiosity around who I am, um, as I mentioned, my bad, Patrice, for having this light shining in your face. But as I mentioned, like just sort of like the liberation reckoning and like my own coming and return to self. The first, or one of the first liberated love notes that I wrote to myself was, "I am not my worth." Like I am not my worth. Which sounds simple, but like was pretty radical because I recall a time where it was second nature to respond to "Who are you?" Tell me a little bit more about yourself with my job, with my role, with the ways in which I serve or were of service to others, um, with very little connection to like, okay, well, like beyond all of that, like who are you? Like where are you? You know what I mean? Like what's my vibe? And so I have like pages on pages, y'all, and like I like to kind of like to just play with that, like to play with that prompt is a love practice in and of itself. And I say play with it because I think that sometimes journaling can be much like everything else, like real like, am I journaling right? Like what I'm supposed to write? Like just and yet like I play with that prompt and it feels good. And it also has brought me to a place where like now I am experiencing work in a way that serves me with less like just like tension and I don't know, resentment maybe. Let me just say it. Like I think resentment is it. Um, because I don't see them at odds. You know what I mean? Like I can actually get to a point where I am with my humanity, serving my humanity and doing good work, you know. Which at least for me was attention. So yeah.
I remember those times where I would stay up till 3 a.m. and we wouldn't go to bed. At that time, I was married, so my wife was in the bed, and I was still at my desk upstairs trying to get things done. And when people did ask me, "Who am I?" or it was like, "What do you do?" Like that's the question that I heard in my mind. And now I try not to lead with what it is that I do for work or like how it is that I serve. But it's hard
Yeah.
because it's something that you have to unlearn. I think we've all been taught to be selfless. To be selfless is most ideal. But that's why we out here struggling to stay alive because we have prioritized everyone else over ourselves and we have invited disease into our bodies because we are not only prioritizing other people over ourselves, but we also resentful that we're also prioritizing those people and they aren't giving back to us in the same sort of way.
Yeah, and I think if we're also at least, and I know for me, I think there was also a certain degree of status that I overvalued associated with the work that
Oh,
I
for
did.
sure.
You know what I mean? Like there's actually like a like less. Um, I've been thinking more about because I know y'all went to Howard undergrad, and if I mention that because there's a certain like just like DC culture, like Black DC culture, there's like a vibe associated with that. If you've been in the mix, you probably know there's like this status vibe that can be overwhelming.
identity crisis because we have,
So much kind of,
you know what I mean, so much of ourselves tied up into it. So it's not by happenstance that I really had to affirm. And we talked about this. I mean, you know my testimony, but like I am not my work was the work that had to happen before I could like legit y'all lean into faith, like leave a space that no longer was in alignment. You know what I mean? Like that was actually like some pre-work, like for that. We ain't gonna get into that right now. Uh, but that was my first liberated love note. I haven't even talked about what liberated love notes is, but if you're unfamiliar, liberated love notes is my love project that started out as a personal practice, um, affirmations, but also like critical questions that support Black folks and not just affirming our identities, but rethinking and unlearning some of the ways that projected and internalized oppression show up in us. Um, Liberated Love Notes lives through in loving accountability, coaching, and consulting, where I build people and culture systems in support of Black founders, Black entrepreneurs who want to do business and build and scale differently. But then also like build learning experiences that center Blackness, not just in the space like as Black people, but even in the how, like the methodologies. To what extent are we inviting spirituality even to our spaces? To what extent are we leaning into the beauty of music? I'm thinking about how like music and dance perpetuate, like they were teaching us the language to a beat. You know what I mean? Like that is not by happenstance. I shared with like I don't know if it was Patrice. I walk around, I'm sharing with Patrice, like my Braxton, my 7-year-old, learned how to spell his name. Shout out to Babu, my father, who since like re-envisioned that to even start to teach Braxton how to spell Belly Money's name. I say all that to say that this is like cultural memory, which is another thing that came up for me even as we experienced Kalinga. You know, the dance, the while we're working, you know, singing and being joyful, even in less than optimal conditions, right? So yeah, that's who I am. That's what I do. All of it is grounded in my why. I love Black people. I know that we deserve safe spaces to learn, to be affirmed, to just be. I know that we can imagine different ways of being together in community and business, given the opportunity to just like sit with the stuff that feels normal. Or actually does, you know. So, and I'm using the language of no because part of this retreat was also like differentiating me from knowing. Shout out to the trees, and I just hit different like that. Like I'm gonna give y'all that. it was hella moments, right? Hella and I say moments.
Yes, yes. So when you talk about in loving accountability, coaching and consulting, and you talk about liberated levels, there is a framework that you created that is the foundation of those two things. And that framework is called the love framework. So I know you want to take us through a conversation, a discussion, hold space to take us through your love framework, accompanied by your liberated love notes, or a few of them anyway. And if anyone's wondering where they can find liberated love notes, it's at brittanyjanae.com. So we are going to go ahead and
Crystle's been a day
jump
wonder.
into.
So I just want to acknowledge that. I'm still even toying with the language of framework. I ain't even gonna lie. Like one of the things I've been thinking about, and I was actually asked, like, what's the spirit behind liberated love notes and loving accountabilities? And so I was like, okay, well, what's the spirit of love? Like, where does this come from? I want to honor that my coming into love is critical to how we be in community, and certainly how it shows up in equity justice work is a credit
to about books. I know we talk about all about love, but salvation, love in Black people, and how she frames returning to love as our work really resonated with me. I want to call in the divinity and beauty that is Toni Morrison, who just in a unbothered manner. I recall in her documentary, I want to say that the Pieces of Me. It used to be on Netflix. I mean Hulu, but it's not on there no more. I was trying to refer it to somebody. It's not there no more. But you Google Toni Morrison's documentary, or even on YouTube, to be honest, she so beautifully shared the day she decided to flick, like literally flick, y'all. I'm flicking off my shoulder. The little white man, that whisper, so unbothered because she knows that she deserves to write, create, connect, innovate beyond the white gaze, right? I'm calling in the work of Audre Lorde, who got me just like real curious about like love as accountability. Because what are we building if we are limiting ourselves to the master's creed? I say all that to say, and there are others, but I say all that to say, I want to call in, because I'm from Baltimore, the work of Dr. Joanne and Elma Martin, the Black Helping tradition, which affirmed for me like what it means to be in alignment and right relationships. I say all that to say that what I'm about to share is not my own, and it feels necessary for me to name that as part of the spirit of love, the L, lineage. It's an acronym, y'all. It's an acronym that literally just puts it down. It's lineage. I talked about the question, who am I? But like a build on that is like, who am I from? And how am I using those questions to ground me in an identity that is, serving. I'm trying to remember who I gave the Liberated Love Notes to. I'm going to go on a whim, and I think it's the one you have, Dre, that connects back to sort of like the why of this. Make sure. Okay. That's really okay. Just read it for you? Sure. Being Black is not exhausting. Racism and white supremacy are exhausting. White apathy in response to racism is exhausting. Being Black is a gift. Being Black is an honor. So that is absolutely the one. Because lineage disrupts my what could be a limiting understanding of Blackness, which is rooted in trauma and our experiences under the dominance of whiteness, colonialism, and like I sat in on a program with Resma Minicum a few years back, somatic abolitionist, racial trauma, and y'all, I broke down in my Zoom screen when he was like, one, you are not deficient off top. You are not deficient. Second, your trauma is not primary. What? Like as a Black person, like there is this vertical relationship with these trash systems, and yet that is not primary. Lineage connects me to an understanding of myself that is more prominent, that is more rooted, that is more grounded. When I'm curious about how the gifts, now they ain't perfect, but how the gifts, right, that my grandmother holds as a creative shows up and through me as someone who has created and curated community. When I'm curious about how my grandmother's healthy but sometimes even unhealthy skepticism shows up through me as someone who experiences questioning and curiosity, right, as like a practice. When I'm curious about how my mom, a teenage mom, who dared have boundaries about what she could do around her child, even before boundaries we had the language. When I'm curious about that, it invites
another level of understanding of who I am. That's beyond. I mean, that stuff is real. Don't get me wrong, and yet it's not primary. Love, lineage. Oh, our collective why. I think I gave that one to you, Patrice. Like, I can see it. Okay.
I strive to unapologetically build community with other Black folks at work and beyond. I reject notions that suggest Black spaces are taboo or insignificant. In fact, they are necessary to my ability to thrive.
It's like the collective over everything. And I'm thinking about, y'all, we heard a story today in Lincoln of Antonio Reyes. Is that, yeah, respect, was that his name, the boxer?
Yes.
Prominent boxer here. Won the world championship. And they were like, all right, as the winner, you get a house, you get a car, you get this, and that. And he was like, no, I don't need all of that. But what you can do is make sure my community has electricity. And when they shared that story, like, I thought that was a very just practical and tangible, like, let me hold that example of what it means to prioritize collective interests over individual gain. Now, in the context of especially the United States, Eurocentric context, individualistic is the norm. Me and mine, dog eat dog, what do we call it? Bootstraps. I got here self-made. All of this stuff, noise. They can have that, and I know that a communal and commitment to the collective is more true to us and more inherent to us. Our collective why. My knowing is, I mentioned earlier, and I'm not going to spend too much time here, is rooted in the work of the Martins, the Black Helping tradition, which is a reminder that if we are to be grounded as Black people committed to our progressive struggle, whatever that looks like, as healers, as builders, as creatives, as people who love Black people, then we must be spiritually grounded. We must have a racial consciousness, and we must always center the community. Like, that is actually practice. Like, do you love Black? You know what I mean? Like, I love Black people versus I embody a love ethic, a Black love ethic. Involves that, and certainly that's difficult, and certainly don't want to suggest that there's a perfect way of doing that, and yet to even be intentional about how might I, like, what might that look like in my day to day, in how I move, even as I exist in predominantly white and or harmful systems. What are some of the very practical ways I'm building community? Sometimes it's in, like, groups, employee resource groups. How am I in relation? What is my relationship to place, wherever my locale is? Am I in community with those who are moving and making change at the grassroots level? Am I existing from a place of, like, how do you describe it? When I was a transplant, in the spirit of accountability, when I was a transplant in St. Pete, I was still in my DC Howard, like, I'm going down here. Y'all need to be whatever, like, things ain't moving and shaking the way it's supposed to be. And I remember Brother Jawan was like, well, maybe this is excellence our way. Like, maybe this is like, have you considered that maybe this is how we? I remember another brother invited me to consider, like, there's a difference between being in the community and of the community. Strive for the latter, especially if you want to try to be, running. You know what I mean? I shouldn't be running. Yeah. And so the communal, the heavy on the communal lineage, our collective why, the values. I think you have that one. mindful enough to recognize that change takes time. However, I do not need to bear the burden of waiting. I do not feel compelled to stay in environments, nor do I feel bad for leaving environments that do not serve my humanity and who I am. Period.
Yeah. And right, I know we got bills. So um here, values. Have you ever realized like how companies can have like really nice websites for like diversity, things, and values? Have you ever had a situation where you like you've seen it, and then when you get there, it's like you know what I mean? Like it's not given collaboration, it's not given equity. I think we're the same way. Like as humans, we have I've had values that felt more aspirational than embodied. You know what I mean? Like, and I love gaining clarity around my values and using those as a way to hold myself accountable about just how I'm moving, whether it's at work, whether it's in my family, whether it's in my relationships, whether it's in spaces with new people. You know what I mean? Like, are my values being reflected back in how people experience me? And so I talked about leaving a place of employment, a place where, like, by all accounts, personally invested, um, and certainly gratitude for the journey. Let me just say that. And it got to a point where I remember talking to my therapist about this, where I'm like, it's just feeling, it's just, I can't really put my hands on it, but it's just, and so she had me do this activity, of which I've since like, she's like, well, what are your values? Because I had just started to do that work, and I'm like, okay, clarity, ease, collective, authenticity, like those are my values, and it's still forever. So, and she said, I want you to do sort of like a bird's eye view. Where are the places, spaces, people that are like values affirming, and then what's kind of like values violating. That was kind of a binary, and so I kind of like did it on a spectrum. You know what I mean? Like, okay, what are? Because I actually don't know that. I don't know what perfect, and I have not reached like I'm not yet found places like oh, all in values affirming and perfect, and yet I think there is something in just being able to map. I've benefited that on a continuum, value violating to values affirming. One of the things I noticed, authenticity and ease. That's why I'm struggling. Ease. I feel like I'm on an end. Like nothing about this, and I'm not suggesting it's easy. I don't experience them as the same. But like, is the flow like just supportive of like my humanity and my health and my ability to like manage other aspects of my life? And then authenticity. Am I able to align sort of like my outward being, whether it's my clothes, my hair, how I speak, with like what I believe? In that moment in time, like that place was like at odds in some ways that I could no longer, I couldn't stomach. And so love, or values rather, embodying my values supports me with moving with clarity. I asked Patrice this week, like the definition, like her definition of survive and thrive, and she threw back on me and was like, well, "How do you know what I mean?" And one of the things I've been sitting with is that clarity. You know what I mean? Like it's thriving, taking me out of autopilot and like allowing me to like even move in less than optimal situations with clarity. Like I know why more. I feel more confident about like the how. It ain't perfect, but I'm moving with clarity, and that's very like that's loving. Like that feels like a love practice. In the spirit of accountability, we're gonna get into that. But values
is connected to that. Part of me abiding my values is also checking in with the people with whom I'm in community. Like, are you getting that? Are you experiencing my commitment to authenticity, clarity, ease, the collective? Because if I'm a leader and all of my team members are experiencing burnout, you know what I mean? And my value is ease. I'm not in alignment. Breathe, call me in. It's not enough for me to be the youngest black VP. Call me. It's not enough for me to, like be doing and no, call me in. Values is connected to this conversation around accountability. And then E, so lineage, our collective Y, values, E, excellence, redefine. Chloe, I think that's you. Last
Shady. Because I'm
last but certainly not least.
Alan.
Oh, yours is too.
Oh,
both of them.
So
you know what? Divine.
Yep.
We're coming back to play.
Okay.
Yes.
This one says, my power is infinite. My energy is not. I deserve rest. Mm-hmm. Click, click. I am owed rest. I do not need to earn rest.
I want you to read the word. Right? Some days I may choose to work twice as hard. Other days they don't get what they don't get. Always my best effort is enough. My best effort is enough. I am enough. Excellence redefined. You know what I'm saying? Like, we talked a little bit about black excellence. Oh, it's so amazing. You know what I'm saying? Hey, Ashay. Y'all, Patrice just hit us with the triangle, go forward, powerful, right? How limiting it is to think that excellence is associated solely with how hard I'm working, how much I'm producing, which lists I'm on. You know what I'm like, whether or not, like, this prioritization of, again, and let me just get this straight. I actually know that in a capitalistic society, money is necessary to live. I feel like I always need to preface that because I have, you know what I'm saying? That's why I emphasize clarity, y'all. Because there's something about, staying just like whole in some of these environments. There's something to be said about like not prioritizing chasing the bag over like running away from, like chasing the bag but like running away from yourself at the same time for this like end game of excellence that's probably not. And so I chose those liberated love notes because they legit reflect what excellence looks like being in this season. Yes, we learn to work twice as hard. And my definition of excellence is not undergirding it, impressing. You know what I mean? Like anyone, right? Being of service and values in my ways, being present for my children. For this exercise, I did it for this event, for this retreat. I didn't want to make just a checklist, and so I was like, what are the values aligned activities that are like associated with the intentions, so that I'm not like finding myself in and what flexibility might I need to afford myself if I don't get through that list? Because there's some things I put on this list, y'all, that I didn't check off, and that's okay. That is so okay. And so excellence redefined, and I wanted to emphasize excellence because excellence redefined is success redefined. What it means to sort of like be in relationships and in community, like all of these things, like be part of loving ourselves is also the invitation to like evolve, redefinition. I don't know if that's the word, redefine. So we talked about love. So lineage, our collective life, value for line, and excellence. The title of this episode does loving accountability look like, especially in this environment that we're in today, where there's a lot of organizing happening, and also what happens when we value our, as Black people, what happens when we value our proximity to whiteness over the safety and value of Black people?
That's a lot. That's a lot. You know what? So I want to ground my response in this liberated love note that I'm about to read. And I almost gave it to Patrice, but I was like, you know what? I actually think that I should read this, right? Because it connects back to the intentions of loving accountability. It's so interesting because I can read on Black people, but I cannot read on white cards. So I'm gonna. I always said actually accountability. Okay. But the liberated love notes read this, and I'm using my light to read this, y'all can see it. It says, I will not fall into the trap of embracing or disregarding Black people who identify differently from me. Black women, Black trans people, Black queer people, Black people with disabilities, Black immigrants, Black people who are and have been incarcerated, and Black people at their intersections all matter to our work in liberation. And so I ground my response in this because this is, as we are building, organizing, as we are like founding our own spaces, we are even like meeting spaces within other institutions. This is what loving accountability looks like, or is, from my perspective, like at its core. Making sure that as we experience more power, we're not using that power to dehumanize other Black people. It's like as simple as that. Like as right, like I am not immune just because I exist in a Black body. I am not immune to some of the gatekeeping. You know what I mean? I am not immune to suggesting that traditional, even like forms of professionalism. You know what? Like if I have the opportunity to build and create my own, certainly we should be thinking critically about how might what I learned about what it means to be other. And so I'll give you one that feels like really practical on top of mine. And it was like an area, I'm gonna just say it was an area of growth for me. As someone who learned that I was like, high achieving. Y'all ever heard like hit the ground running? I benefited from that in my career. Someone who could hit the ground running, someone who could think on their feet. And there are Black people who think differently. There are Black people who hold different aspects of just like neurodiversity. That I'm gonna be honest, it became more apparent to me as I led and began stewarding teams. It's real harmful. I'm not even talking about like you don't have like to own a business to be thinking about this, but like it can be very harmful if we're not getting curious about how am I perpetuating perfectionism. You know what I mean? Like I had someone who brilliant, and that's just that brilliant, Black, and certainly just part of my like lineage and growth as a leader. As someone who loves Black people, who part of their identity was being neurodivergent in a Black space, like neurodivergent in a Black space. And I think sometimes we assume that Black spaces equal safety. That's the intention. It's actually really sad. That's why I was a little upset about the whole innate
NABJ debacle because I'm like, damn, like, oh my God, we say black people, right? And yet they're not the only ones, right? So let me just say that we assume that like black spaces are going to be safe, that black spaces will meet us where we are, and I want to say that sometimes we conflate, oh, what do we have real excellent can look different. You know what I mean? And so I don't want. I sometimes I think that perfection equals excellence, or like excellence equals perfection, and I don't want to suggest that. And I also want to suggest that centering blackness and humanity means compromising quality, because I certainly don't believe that. You know what I mean? Like that's just not my truth. But I recall being in spaces where black people who thought differently or held neurodivergent identities were like, "Oh, you're just not capable." You know what I mean? Like I can't even begin to, because if you don't do it this way, or if you can't spit it out this quickly, or if you require support, if you will require, Crystle was like, if you require accommodations, it kind of goes back to that twice as hard. Like we are so disillusioned by the need to be twice as hard that we can't even see like the best effort. You know what I mean? Like that we can't even see my best effort. Like, um, I'm thinking about um, how it is out of alignment with the spaces, not curious about how do we build systems that support and allow your gifts and your strengths. You know what I mean? Like that's love and accountability. Uh, when I think about the work that I'm doing with young people, I'm really sensitive about conversations around what it means to like get ahead when we are nurturing young minds. You know what I mean? Like I'm so sensitive about how even as we black professionals find ourselves in sort of like mentorship roles, we're focused on what we had to do versus what we've had to like learn and or unlearn. That's accountability. You know what I mean? Like that level of like curiosity and critical thinking uh, is what one with young people deserve. And I wish at least I was more privy to as an option. Um, I forgot your last question.
My last
Well,
question.
it was something very specific.
Yeah,
Before I
what
kind of went
happens?
into that.
What happens when we value our proximity to whiteness over
Yeah,
the safety of black people?
I think one thing to name that we don't talk enough about is that there is a risk associated with, and like a big part of your work is collective liberation and freedom. There's actually a risk in laws associated. There can be risks in laws associated with bucking a system. So I think we have to name that because otherwise, like there's risk of loss, and the other side of that, there is benefit to playing the game. And I'm gonna be honest, like one of the things, well, I'm almost always honest. So I don't even know why I said that. I know I caught myself like, let me. What I? Oh, what is that? I don't know what that was. Man, that's one of the things I have even been thinking about as it relates to the DEI practice. Right? I've really been thinking about that, and I say this from the love. There is a quote by James Baldwin who talks about, "I am critical of this nation." Like my, this is a paraphrase. This is love. Like I'm critical because I love this nation. So that's my posture. Even in a space that is altruistic and as I guess positive and impactful as the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, which I feel like I grew up in. Like I was like doing the math, and I'm like, it's been like a good 15 years. Um, and I've noticed that the space, there are like some dominant, of which I've had proximity to. So let me just name that. I too have benefited from a certain degree of the palatability, of DI. Like the stuff that like like the stuff that like I have benefited from proximity to that. I actually had a whole moment for myself around like, okay, what does it mean to value exposure around because I feel like that's actually around like I like the exposure piece being deemed a voice of authority by otherwise problematic institutions. You know what I mean? Like, there's a cost associated with that because you got to keep up with it. You kind of got to be exploitative. So maybe you're not paying people. You know what I mean? Like you're not treating people right. Like you kind of have. You don't have to be. I don't want like you don't have to be. I don't think you should be. I think you shouldn't be. And yet to benefit to the extent that I have seen many people, some of which are our elders, in this space. Don't get me wrong. So I want to hold the whole hand because I actually think that you can you can do good work that shifts the needle, that moves the needle, and in the spirit of loving accountability, like holding in love. You know what I mean? Like I wish, and I've spoken to people, sort of like organizers about this, like what would we learn if even some of the black people on pedestals as movement builders, if we understood them in more nuanced ways so that we didn't replicate the same stuff, the respectability. You know what I mean? Can we, one thing I will say, just because of this audience, I think one of the most powerful references, the talented tenth that's always referenced. Black people love citing that. And yet we don't talk about how R.I.P. W.B. Du Bois actually realized that it's actually not what we're supposed to be. But we will reference, especially black folks who are proximal to status, represent and hold, like, we need talent too. And he actually was like, upon further reflection, I love that for him. Like upon further reflection.
Now that I think about it,
this is not what I meant. An elevation without connection to collective liberation will not serve us. In fact, it's giving America correct. He actually had a whole reckoning with that. I want that for like us today. You know what I mean? I want that for the people I have worked with, transitioned from. Still watching from a distance. I want that level of just like loving accountability. I actually think we deserve that. I think there's something powerful there because I still got my own stuff, and I love that I have people who be like, "It's not giving."
And if you don't have people around you who are able to talk to you in those ways, or if you're not accepting of feedback when you do something that is harmful to others, then it's time to do something.
We're not above reproach. Even our books are not above reproach. Love is very, and I've been thinking about, well, where did my, in the spirit of lineage, I've been even thinking, I mentioned my grandmother was like, suspicion about everything, my dad's mom. But I also remember one day going to my dad and saying, like, just as it relates to faith, and we're about to wrap up in a little bit, it's time for dinner, as it relates to Christianity, which is, if you're black, depending on how you were raised, Christianity be like real heavy. Like there's certain things you don't question, and in some communities it's faith, And I remember asking my father, like, why? This was a reference to my maternal grandparents, who my grandfather was not an ancestor, known as a man of big faith. I said, why do they praise a God when bad stuff keep happening to them? Like I asked that question as like I asked that as like maybe 12. And I'm sharing that not because like I've made space in my life for the range of spirituality, of which includes Afro-Indigenous black forms of Christianity, but to even have permission to question is what I'm getting at. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that I was even okay with asking my father that, an authority figure, about something so sensitive, I want that for us today. Like, that's love and accountability at its core. Like, curiosity, an invitation to hold me accountable to who I say I want to be. Without necessarily trying to get to a clean answer or something. Because none of this stuff is messy.
holding me holding me accountable to the person that I say that I want to be. I really love that. I think that this is a very powerful conversation about loving accountability and I'm not gonna call it a framework. I don't know what I'm gonna call
It's
it.
just the behind it.
The acronym.
Yeah.
The spirit behind
the framework is fine, but I don't know.
framework.
But
Okay, fair.
I'm open to suggestions on language, by the way. So when I post in the comments,
Routes. Yeah. But I hope that everyone that was listening is able to do that reflection on themselves to consider am I a safe space for people to share how it is that they're actually feeling, for people to hold me accountable if I am causing harm. And if your answer to that is no or I don't know, then it's time to do, as I said before, a bit more reflection. But thank you, Brittany, Janae, for this conversation, as well as Dre, Patrice, Noea, Chloe. This has been an excellent experience so far, and we are going to go have dinner
and wine.
Enjoy. What are we going to do?
And wine.
And wine, yes. Dinner and wine. And enjoy the rest of the week together, and really just wind down later to talk about today, where we focused a lot on Black joy and how that impacted us, and how are we different now than we were this morning. So I hope that you all enjoyed the conversation. Have a great night, and I'll see you next week. All right. We got to turn it off.
Right on time. Look at
Yeah.
that. Look at that. Low battery was like, all right now.